But yeah, no, it was a different era back then as far as kids and their involvement, wasn't it?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I was fortunate, because that my dad included me in all his hound activities as much as he could.
He needed a scapegoat.
Yeah. And so I was with him. I was his shadow.
Yeah.
So when he would go to plot days or go, Dad, back in the early days, he got the plot fever really bad back in the 50s, about the time that they were, just after they were recognized by UKC.
Right.
So, he went around, he reminded me that we went up to Ohio. There was a guy named H.L. Brown who was the first president of the National Plothound Association. And he went there and looked at his dogs. And, he, within a reasonable circle that you could drive on crooked 2-lane roads in a 1952 Ford, he was out there looking around for plot dogs and looking and considering dogs that he might want to breed to and all, So although Dad cared nothing about competition at all, but
Right.
He loved the breed and he was interested in getting and having good dogs, So I got a dose of that pretty early on, listening to these guys, talk about the old days. And now when I see some of this history being misquoted, it kind of gets my dander up a little bit, and I want to, my righteous indignation, comes to the front. But I said, "Whoa, here, they just don't know, These guys just don't know." But
it's been a while. You've been around the block, though. It's funny because, like I was talking to you earlier with the coonhound side and the big game, it's funny to me, like how we think that they're very different, and they are very different dogs, I think, in some ways. But in other ways, I mean, those registered coonhounds were the backbone of what we were producing, for these big game dogs like Hickory Nut Harry and, Jet Dogs. We brought in some Mad Dog stuff from Robbie and Lisa, and it's funny when you look at the big view of it, they're really closely intertwined, but I think sometimes our own, I don't want to say egos, but like just sometimes ignorance is bliss. We don't care about papers, a lot of us, but in other ways, we do the exact same thing when we write it down. It's just a
it's easy
record
for you to say.
Yeah, a record for us to keep track of the dogs, instead of paying a registry per se.
Yeah.
But, all these dogs, they came down and were tested over the years at these hunts. Those competition hunts early on, I could only imagine going back. If you could step back in time to like the first night hunt, that would be such a humbling experience, thinking where we're all at now, and we wouldn't be here at all without any of that. And I know we've got a really big coon hunt coming up, and I really wish I was going to be there, but I am not going to make it this year.
And I really wish you were too.
I do. Next year, I was talking with Danny. I said, we've just got to put in for time, and we got to make sure that we get out there because she's dying to see it and meet you. I told her, I said, we just got to get out there.
I'm really looking forward to meeting her too. And
we might even drag one of the boys. We'll see. All of them will be a little bit much, but I know it's a cool hunt to go see. If you've never been to Autumn Oaks, I highly recommend make the trip just for the contacts and the stories. And shoot, that's where we really met. And that was a long time ago now. It feels like.
It does. Yeah, Autumn Oaks, I don't want to, I find myself a lot having to change we hear all the time now in the news about pronouns. What's your pronoun? Well, I don't want to use the big I pronoun, because, but I was the guy that tagged the event where history is made on Autumn Oaks because I thought that explained that event better than anything else because there's so much history of the coonhounds that happened there. And there's so many of the historical figures that we look back at, the Joe Houses and the John Monroes and James Merchants and all down through history, Albert Vaughn and with the Blue Ticks. All of these people passed through those gates, and were part of that whole picture at one time. And we were talking, you and I, just a few minutes ago about the Leafy Oak in Kenton, Ohio. That was the forerunner of Autumn Oaks. And Eddie Ross, who was a Blue Tick man, he had the Mountain Music dog. Mountain Music Blue was one of his famous stud dogs and all. But Eddie, he started the Leafy Oak, which was basically a coonhound field trial. And, and the progression of all that originally, I guess I can use this word on your podcast, Jason. Back in the old days, if you read the history, they called them crap sack races. They put coon manure in a burlap sack, wet it down, drug it across the field and through the woods and put it up a tree, and that's what the dogs ran,
That's what they used for scent.
Yeah, that was their scent drag. And, that's what the early competition events were. They were. And you guys have carried that on out west with your field trials. Field trials, as in the pure sense, aren't real big back east anymore. The competition hunts have kind of taken over for that, and that was the desire of those guys that wrote the competition hunt rules, was to try to have a hunt that better typified a night hunt, 4 guys getting out there and turning their dogs loose and hunting for a couple hours, 3 hours. But yeah, there's lots and lots of history, and Autumn Oaks is responsible for an awful lot of it. And so I always thought that was a good name for Autumn Oaks, and I'm kind of glad that they've kind of hung on to that. And
it's been a while.
Refer to it. Yeah, 1960 was the first one. But as we were looking back here, what did I say, 1920?
I think you said 21?
27. 1927 was the first Leafy Oak. That's Depression time, man. At least I think it is, or my dad lied to me because he said he grew up in the Depression. He was born in 1920.
I don't think he's lying. I think there really was. That's, I mean, isn't that the truth still today, though? I mean, like all of us that are still in this, and everybody that is feeding a dog or hauling it to the woods, I mean, we're all making sacrifices, whether it's time or money or whatever. And in today's world, like, that's a lot. So to make the trip to something like this, I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't think it was worth it. But I know the people I met, and I know the dogs that I got to see, and it opened up some opportunities for me to bring some dogs out here years ago. And it's a great event. Yeah, it's focused around a competition hunt, but there is a whole lot more that goes on there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm thankful that Alan Gingrich has put together this media center there in the headquarters building now and provided space for us, In fact, I just got a call I called the other day from Trevor Wade saying that they want to do a podcast there about this history, and tying together some of this old history and stuff. So UKC's been very accommodating, and I think they appreciate the history. I really do. Oh,
sure.
And, of course, UKC has gone through ownership changes over the years and all. But despite all that, I think, that history has still been important to them. And I hope that it always will be. Because, history to me is so important. Whether you agree with it or not, it is what it is. It's our history. Right. It's what we, and it's cliche to say, but if we don't if we don't remember it, we're destined to repeat it.
Oh,
We need to
definitely.
look back, at things. But the history of coon hunting, as you said, Cliff's no version.
We both got our tongue tied
Yeah, I
tonight.
guess I got the old saying used to be, I got my tongue wrapped around my eye tooth and I can't see a word I'm saying. Well, that's my problem today, I guess. But anyway, looking back, it was foxhounds from Europe came here, and then the settlers, needed a dog that would catch tree game, and so they bred the treeing instinct into them, and then and one of the breeds that's been near and dear to my heart, the plot dog. It was developed here in this country to be a big game dog first, to be a bear dog first, and then it was guys like Dale Brandenburger, who incidentally won the very first Autumn Oaks in 1960 with a plot. He went to the mountains, got these dogs, brought them back to the Midwest in Illinois, and began to hunt coon with them. And Dale was one of the guys that participated in the very first UKC night hunt
Oh,
at
really?
Ingraham, Illinois, back in 1953.
Wow.
And there were two plots that won that hunt. They tied. And
Hey, that's not bad.
So Dale, he took the bear dog and converted it to a coon dog. And now
Right.
you guys out west are taking these coon dogs that have been competition bred down through the years, and now
Right.
you're converting them over to bear and cat and fox or whatever you choose to run with them. That shows the versatility in that you basically can breed a dog for anything, I guess, But
Enough time and money.
yeah, it's enough time and money. And that time becomes a real valuable commodity, trust me.
Well, that's what we're looking at. I'm so loaded up on young dogs right now because, the older dogs are finished dogs, I'll call them. They're almost 5. So, I mean, we've got, a few good years at least of running fox, and then we'll just probably end up converting them over to running some bobcat. But the thing is with that, then you got to load up on young dogs. And now there's I think I've got 2 that are a year and a half, and I've got 3 that are under a year. And it's going to be super wild. But trying to, realize those older dogs are only here for so long. So they have a job. They got to get you to where you want to be. They got to maintain it. Then they hopefully will end up doing some training along the way before they're too old. And it's just this constant revolving treadmill,
It is, and their lives are so short. And then when you further reduce that by their actual productive years, where they, especially if you're big game hunting or running them in rough territory and stuff, their bodies can only stand so much like ours can, although the endurance of a hound in itself is an amazing thing.
Right.
But it's I will always regret, but I don't worry about it so much because there was nothing I could do to change it. I always regret that I was not able to continue on the line of plots that my dad and I were really enjoying and catching game with back in the day,
Yeah.
And then Dad, after I went to Michigan and worked for the registries, he had some good friends, younger guys there that really were great to take him hunting and to help him with his dogs, even as he got into an advanced age.
Sure.
But it's just a blip on the screen that we have,
Yeah.
and it's if you're thinking about, there's a guy down here on TV in the mornings in Florida, and he gives a fishing report. Of course, we got all kinds of fishing here. We got saltwater, inshore, offshore.
Right.
We got freshwater. And his line is, in every segment he gives, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're too darn busy.
Yeah.
Well, if you're too busy to go hunting with the hound, if you've been bitten by the bug, you got to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
You just got to get out there,
True. Yeah, and that's like for us right now. It's so dang hot, and we're all waiting
Oh,
on season. But that's why one year, well, I guess it was my first year at W. Buddy sent us out, and it was a rough trip. I'm not gonna lie, Mike and I, we took two guys that have never worked together before and threw them in a truck from
oh man.
Washington to Salisbury Road. And we finally made it out there, and it was an interesting experience. It was not something that I, in my wildest dreams, would have thought. But getting to meet everybody there, coming through the doors, and see these dogs. I mean, I guess I'm kind of a weirdo, but I don't believe in breeding to the best thing in your backyard.
Right.
I think if you're going to breed or you're going to bring anything into your pack, you should try to do the dogs right and bring home the best thing that you can. So I guess my first big hunt, I didn't even get to stay for the hunt, but I got to hang out during the day, was UKC Worlds in 2014.
Okay.
And my great grandma had passed, so I had flown out with my dad to settle up the estate with my family. And I just convinced him to drive me down to Ohio. We were in Michigan. I said, just take me down and drop me off, and you can pick me up whenever you want to show up. Like, I will find people to stay busy with. And just to walk around and see, like, at that time, I remember going there to see Robbie and Lisa Brooks. Like, that was what was on my mind, or any of the Downings. Those were the two people that I really wanted to go and meet as a blue tick person, because I had just kind of watched, and you go through and you read old articles and things about those dogs, and you talk to, I mean, now I would consider those guys good friends. We may be a long ways off, but they always know there's a couch here, and I know
You
vice
and
versa.
Russ kind of have similar beards.
I told Danny 2 nights ago, actually, I said, God dang it, I wish Russ would live in Oregon. He could be a Southern Oregonian right now.
Oh yeah, Russ would fit in everywhere. I mean, he'd be different, but he'd figure out a way to adapt.
Oh man. I'll tell you a funny Russ story if you want to hear it. It's really not a Russ story. It's a bum story. And I told Danny someday I'll publish this, but since we're talking about him. So we drive out for that Heartland Classic hunt on a whim. Jay Leahy had got a hold of me, and a bunch of blue tick people are out there in Wisconsin.
Oh yeah.
So Danny and I, we decided, hey, let's drive out. We'll go camp along the way. We'll go to the hunt, and then she was going to fly home, and I was going to drive back to haul some puppies. And we end up getting out there, and Russ and Shelly opened their home to us. We stayed there with them, and they showed us around where the tornado came through. And, by the end of it, I was wanting to move. Like, I was ready to drop everything and move out
It'd
there.
have you hunting those all blue ticks, or maybe some of those lab crosses.
Yeah, the lab crosses. So I had this cool dog box I made. It was an over the rail. And it just kind of left, it sat on top of the red bed rails. But these new trucks, they've got that plastic cap that goes over the top of it. And we had Bum on one side and we had my dogs on the other. And I don't remember when it happened, but when I got home, I realized Bum had chewed the entire inside lip of that bed rail off, like the cap. It didn't hurt anything, but in my mind, I laughed out loud to my wife, and we've joked about that ever since we came home. We've never said anything, but I'm like, the day that truck got sold, I said, the bad thing is there's a little piece of Bum in that truck. And it was so bad. They sold the truck. I traded it in, and they ended up having to ship it back to the East Coast because they couldn't sell it here. It was a houndsman's truck. I mean, I royally used every bit of it.
Through the paces, huh?
So if anybody out there is driving a 2014 black extra cab Dodge 1500 and it's got a chewed up passenger side bed rail, that might be what happened to it.
That just describes everybody in the state of Georgia, right?
Oh, really? We didn't know those guys. Like, literally, we had no idea. We didn't know them or Robbie and Lisa or anybody out there. All of them were just so great. And that Heartland hunt was so inviting.
Jason, here again, I'll use that pronoun, but I did start that Heartland Classic hunt as an AKC hunt in Tomah, Wisconsin. And it was there a couple of years, and then we moved it over to Nashua, Iowa. And then it moved over to, when I left AKC, it moved over to Wisconsin, and it's done very, very well there. That's a great hunt. A lot of good people, great coon hunting. It's just
you can win a quad. Yeah. I mean, don't they usually give it? They call it the wheeler hunt.
Yeah, what they do is they buy two quads or two wheelers, as they say up there, and they raffle them all. Raffle one off and give. The raffle brings in enough money to buy the two machines. Sure. And they give one of the machines to the winner of the hunt and the other to the raffle winner. So it works great, And, and Erica Froming was the president there. When I left, I encouraged Erica to be to step up because she's such a leader. And she did a super job with it. And then, of course, her family, they started their family and all. And so she stepped down. But I understand it's still doing great. And I always enjoyed that. But you were talking about Autumn Oaks earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point I wanted to make real quick about that. The internet has changed things so much. But there was a time when you went to Autumn Oaks, every stud dog in the country that was anything was there. And they were in the barns with their banners and all. And even to the point where we started what we called a breeder's showcase. And moved them in. We first rented some tents and had them set up stalls in these tents, circus tents. And then when they built that big Raper Center, folks, that's the guy's name, Tom Raper, there where they do the bench shows and all that stuff now. Then they brought that into there, and they had the booths all in there for a while. But the internet has changed things so much. You don't see the stud dogs displayed in the barns at the events the way you used to. But there was a day when you could go into Autumn Oaks, and it was like the biggest county fair that you've ever been to, or state
all
fair.
Coon dogs.
All coon dogs. And to have been a part of that history, and I remember that even before I was involved with it.
Sure.
It was that way. So,
and there's the puppy barn.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's the experience. I mean, the hunt, I didn't even walk on a cast. I mean, I wish I would have had time, but just the experience and the people and, just remembering that a lot of these dogs out there, I mean, there are a lot of guys bringing them out and doing very well with them.
Oh, yeah.
Or breeding them in, and crossing them in. But, I mean, I know that there's a lot of guys there that represent our sport. Like you said, the media center. So all of that inside now with the UKC show ring and their stuff. I mean, you're going to be there. What, the guys over from Coonhound Collective, they're going to be there.
They're there. Ben.
Yeah, Ben's going to be outside.
I think. Is he going to be outside?
Yeah, he's not allowed inside because he's working for me on the side. So he got an outside booth.
Okay.
We'll get there later in this podcast.
Okay.
He's double working.
I know last year the boys that had that Coonhound Confidentials, they were there. Clayton Stark was there. I was there. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, Josh Michaelis was there, although I don't think he was set up right there. But anyway...
it's the place to be. I mean, really, because what I feel like I'm missing out on this year is all of us have really gotten, I would say, a lot closer in our business dealings and personal relationships over the last 3 years. So to me, it's like that's coming down to the coffee shop and sitting down, to sit down and hang out with nubbins again and just that whole atmosphere. I look forward to coming and checking out the media section next year.
Well, it's a good thing that UKC provides that media center because Terry Walker, kind of bailed out on me there. I used to set up with Terry, and he graciously allowed me to sell
Vacate your
books
duties.
there, and he got the worst of that deal because I sold a lot more books than I sold subscriptions for him. I'm
Right.
sure, because I get out in front of the booth and get involved in a conversation with somebody that might last an hour. In the meantime, Terry was back there writing subs like crazy. But and that's I don't know. That kind of brings up the subject of full cry.
The kind of elephant in the room. It's been pretty well known, and then other times I've got guys that are totally still shocked that it happened.
Yeah.
But,
well, Jason, let me tell you. So I know you hear a lot of this, and everything reminds me of another story. And I'm going to tell you a short one right here that has absolutely nothing to do with coon hunting, but I think I can segue back into what we're talking about. In my hometown of Beckley, West Virginia, we were in the car days. I graduated high school in '64. Cruising was a big, big thing. We had like 3 drive-ins in town.
Oh, geez.
But yeah, and it was called Valley Drive, and you go up and you cruise up the Valley Drive, and you go around this one drive-in, and you come down and you cruise around another one, and then you go to one where most of the kids hung out was a place called Pete and Bob's. But anyway, just across town or on the other side of town, there was a place called King Tut, like the tomb.
Sure.
King Tut's tomb. Okay. And they kind of appealed to the older set a little bit, But man, they had amazing food. Pizza, that was their specialty. And their barbecue sandwiches and their hot dogs and all this. Well, finally, after all these years, that restaurant is closing down.
Oh, man.
And Facebook has been swamped with people. They've got petitions to the city of Beckley to make this place a historical monument and all this. And it's just a couple that worked hard, built that business, worked it for, 40 years or more, probably 50, and want to retire,
Right.
And nobody wants to let them go, No, you can't do this.
That.
You got to, So that's full cry. That's full cry. There is a lot of people out in the heartland out here in the forks of the creek, I call it. You can't say on the corner or the block. The forks of the creek that loved Full Cry magazine and cut their teeth on it. And guys like me that basically learn to read or love to read, learn to love to read through the pages of Full Cry magazine. And everybody will tell you the stories of how it used to come all rolled up tight in a brown paper thing, and you had to cut it with a scissors or a razor blade real easy so you didn't cut the cover of your magazine, so then you could open it up, and you had to roll it back the other way so it would lay flat. You might have to lay a book on it or something. But man, Full Cry has been such a part. And then to hear that you and Danny are stepping up, and going to continue that tradition, man. It's like King Tut driving, man.
We're excited. It is. That's what, when we saw it, it was one of those things that it was really shocking, because like for us, Full Cry's just always been around. It was one of those things that, everybody had. Everybody's grandpa had it. It's been passed around 10,000 times. So when we heard it was closing, that's when I started getting on the phone, and I called you and a few other good friends. And, my wife's vision for this, I will say, is it's really nice that it's transitioned. Like, we were looking at it as a business, right? Like, it was something we could do. It's something we're passionate about. Yeah. But it's a business. And then all the letters, handwritten letters are coming in and comments and, emails from people talking about, like you said, literally it's the only thing they read as a kid, like learning to read using Full Cry, and, people with sick parents in the hospital under a coma that doctor said the only time he calms down is when you read to him. So she would bring his coon hunting magazines and read to him. Like, then it takes this weird shift. Like, yes, it is a business and we got to run it that way if we want to keep it around. Because honestly, you had a great post actually when all of this kind of started. It is something that, it's got to be a good product because it's got to have some value. But at the same time, if there's not the support or the demand for it, like inevitably everything dies without the support. So with that being said, it was just one of those things that when we started really looking into it and, Terry was really good with working with us and making something happen. It all kind of fell into place. Mm-hmm. And now it's a lot of work. I will say that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a ton.
Well, having been in closely tied to the coonhound publication business for all those years with UKC and also PKC, who both had house organs, mm-hmm. and all. It is a lot of work. There's no question about it. But thank goodness you have all of these programs and things at your disposal that makes it easier than it was way back in the day. But it behooves all of us in the hound community to get behind this project. I know you're not asking for unsolicited advertising here.
Don't spend your money if you don't want to. No.
But
right. It is like
but
for
we
me.
got to get behind it. We do, because if we want it, we got to get behind it. If we want our country to survive, we got to stand up. And if we want this magazine to survive, and I definitely do, and I can go on record and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I bet I was one of your first subscribers.
I can't say that.
Because when I saw that the magazine was going to continue, I said, we definitely have to do that.
You were hot on it. The nice thing was, I'll say this, there were a lot of familiar names that popped up very quickly. Good. And that is a humbling experience. When my wife, we're up with the baby at 2 a.m. and she's like, oh, so-and-so just came through. So-and-so just subscribed. So-and-so did this. When you're sitting there holding the baby, wondering what the hell you were doing buying a magazine, it's,
well, I always
it makes
heard
you feel
if you want a job done, find a busy man. Or woman, and you are very blessed to have Daddy. How much? I mean, what? I look at this gal. I see the posts on Facebook, all this canning and all these things that she does. She's so creative. I'm just excited to see what she's going to do with this thing, because she's a very creative person, obviously.
Yes, she is.
Very grounded and man. Yeah.
It'll be good and it'll evolve. I mean, I think as things go on, this is a platform for houndsmen. This is all of us that want to talk about social media and not putting things out there. Like, this is something, like I told you, my wife's going to pull the trigger on or not. If it's not something that's going to be positive for us as houndsmen, mm-hmm. or at least contribute some kind of perspective that can be beneficial, this isn't a place for it. This is a gathering place. Like, I think of it like our podcast started off, and now look at mm-hmm. it. We're how many million views in, and we've just built kind of this little community around us. It's kind of the same thing, It's nice to see that there is good light shining through, like, all over, if you just know where to look for it. And guys like you, like I've told you before, I don't want to give you a big head, but your
head's big enough.
I'm going to say it.
You want to know why? Hat size? It's growing wider.
It gets wider. It's because you got them headphones on all the time, holding the top down.
Yes, I don't know.
It's just, it's taken a long time for everything to get here. If you think about, I'm going to go deep here. Think about our dogs. Think about us as houndsmen and women. Think about us as families. Think about us as, businesses or podcasts. Like, all of this is responsible, and our entire lives over a stinking dog. Like, a dog is what did this for us all. Mm-hmm. And look at the doors it's opened. I use you and I use Mark Zapp constantly. Like, when I'm talking with my wife about what you guys have done over the years. and just pioneered a lot, with your work through the registries and Mark with WIC and on with, I mean, countless people like you guys too. We wouldn't all be here. Who would have thought, your evening radio show could be at your fingertips for virtually no cost? And, it's a pretty crazy world that, like I said, you've stayed extremely, extremely relevant in, and I'm glad to have you around. I'm glad to call you a friend.
Oh, well, the friendship's number one, for sure.
I know we talk more fishing and kids than we do dogs.
I know, but when I saw this guy with the big beard, at Autumn Oaks, and I think was that the first, did you go out to dinner with Zepp and
I did.
Yeah.
And we went to pie at O'Charlie's
hotel room.
Yeah, and then I'll never forget it. We were up in your hotel room with Nubbins, and he had that muscadine wine, and we sat and talked dogs for hours. And I remember calling my wife and just telling her I just had the coolest night I can probably ever think of with dogs.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Well,
and here we are.
You just need to get a plane ticket because Nubbins is.
I hear.
He's already told me that on Saturday afternoon he's going to need the truck because he's going to go back to the room and watch Alabama play.
Oh, yeah, he's got to watch the game. I don't know why he's watching.
I don't know either, but that's my bud.
No, that's next year. I'm really hoping we can make it. We looked into some flights, me get out of here Friday after work and get in, but it's just too expensive, short notice. And a new baby is a little rough.
Hey, my friend Lee Kearns, who I hope to have on the podcast here just very shortly, with Johnny Brinkley. Johnny just turned 90 years old, and Lee is, I believe, he's in his early 80s, okay? But Lee will tell you the stories of 5 guys going to an event like Autumn Oaks or Walker Days in a car with the dogs in the trunk.
Right.
Sleeping in the back of a pickup truck with a tarp over them.
Those are my people, man. Ask Buddy. That's how I roll the field trials. I just sleep on the ground most of the time.
Well, when I lived before I went to UKC, I had a job up in eastern Ohio. And I bought a pickup truck that had a camper shell on the back of it. And I built the dog box right in the back, far back. So I had the dogs underneath and I had a bunk,
Oh, nice.
So that was, man, I was sad. I didn't have any, well, my kitchen was a Coleman stove, and my bunk was right there. I was all nice and dry up off the ground.
Oh, yeah?
The dogs underneath. It might have been a little aromatic at times.
The worst part is the smell, and every time you're about to fall asleep, somebody's got to scratch or flop over and the whole truck moves. Have you seen some of those new campers that they're making like that out here? I know California is where I see most of them come from.
No, I haven't. I don't think.
They're really cool. The first one I saw was Sonny's, and my buddy Cougar had one, and now there's a lot of guys running them. But they're a camper shell, and, you can configure them however you want. Most of them have 2 bunks, one down each side, and they're a dry camper. But then you've got your big door, man door in the middle, and then there's 2 dog box doors, one on each side. So you've got actually 2 dog box doors that you can put dogs in, and it's pretty cool. I keep saying I want to get one. I just need to commit and do it because, God, for on the road, it'd be nice.
Well, I'm kind of downsizing. I've been hauling around a big 4x4 box in the back of my truck with top storage and all, and I'm not using it. It's really not the best kind of box for Florida. You need an open air box down here where there's a lot of, because it's so
humid.
stinking hot. This last weekend, Ella and I went up to that birthday and wedding anniversary celebration for the Brinkleys, and each day it was over 100.
Yeah,
real temperature. So hauling dogs can be a real challenge down here, but I'm thinking of just getting rid of the dog box and going to one of those fancy crates like the waterfowl hunters use those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know which brand is a better one, but I'm going to start looking into that, I think, and just go that route instead of a standard dog box. But so
Just haul in one makes sense to me.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had to buy air conditioning for my dogs. We when we started, did you get that picture of the little silver tracker I'm hunting out of with the dogs in the back?
So no, those trackers are bad little machines, man.
I'm telling you, man, 30 miles a gallon, that got me through the Biden gas crunch. That's the only way I kept hunting was we could go out and hunt for, $8-10 a night instead of 40, it seemed like. And I've been thinking about a box or some kind of camper shell to put on that, take the convertible top off and do like a bird dog topper style.
Yeah.
Because I got to have something. But those single crates, if I was just hunting one or two, I will tell you, that'd be the way to go. My back likes moving them a lot better than moving a whole box.
Oh, yeah, I can't move this big. It's an old Heritage. Those were built by Jarvis Umphers there for a while, and then they were sold to a company over in Cub Run, Kentucky, wherever that is, and that's where mine came from. But they're just too heavy. I mean, and I don't need it.
No, and like
about
you
the only
said,
thing I use it for is haul firewood home from Nubbins. Every time I go up there, he's got a stack of firewood. I don't know what he thinks I'm doing with all that firewood down here.
he's just making sure you don't freeze. That's a good buddy.
Well, no, he's taking care of my fire pit out because in the wintertime I like to sit out, with
Sure.
a little of Nubbins creation there in a glass and watch the fire.
Well, like you said, the box has got to fit a purpose. I mean, that's a whole podcast on its own because it is totally different. The boxes out here, well, we learned it at Autumn Oaks. I mean, that was a real rude awakening because we had Brian Sorelli from Alder Grove go out with us. And we set up one of his boxes, and I've never seen so many oogle over a rig rack. Like, to us, that's standard edition. Like, you have a rig rack on your truck. You have dogs at rig. And it's just so different to see, like, once you start looking at all these boxes and different manufacturers, how they're making them, it's pretty interesting. I'm a big fan of them flat top coon boxes. Like, simple, light, easy.
That there was such an evolution. I mentioned Lee Kearns talking about hauling the dogs in the trunk of the car, and that was a common thing in the 50s.
Right. They made bags 60s. For you guys to hang them out the window. I was just looking at an old advertisement in this full cry, and it's literally a burlap sack that you hang out the window and your dog's legs poke through, and you two could own one for like $2.99 or whatever it was.
Man. That's right. But, that was when you got enough jingle in your jeans to buy a pickup truck, which you could buy a new one probably for about $1,800 back then. And then you got a dog box in the back, and they were usually plywood, put together or built out of orange crates or something. Then there was a fellow named Mark Blount up in Three Rivers, Michigan. And I met Mark when I first went to work at UKC. He built the first commercial dog boxes and advertised them for coon hunters called Blount's Custom Built. And they had siding on them like an RV trailer, because that's where Mark was an engineer for, at that time it was called AMF Scamper, and he would get the scraps out of the factories and build these dog boxes. And it was a wood-framed dog box with top storage and, sliding vents on the side. So he was the first one. And then a guy named Jim Bainbridge, who had worked for him for a while, became his competitor and built what was called the Houndsman Deluxe.
I've had one.
And then there was a guy named in that area, Percy Mullins, started building the Mullins dog box, and his grandson now builds that same box, and I can't think what he names it. But anyway, that was and that was in the early to mid '80s. So these custom made dog boxes for coon hunting have that's how old they are, 40 years old, I guess, 40, 45 years.
I know we did not sell that dog box. It was still sitting there at the end of the weekend, but
Yeah.
it was just interesting for us, because it is. I catch myself in it too, the competition world, big game world. But really, when you break it down, it's the same reason a guy runs a walker over a blue tick or anything else. Everybody's got their preference and their own thoughts on it. So
yeah, for sure. But,
so are you going to be? I know you're going to be in the main building. So if people want to come find you, they're going to go to the main show ring building.
No,
and you're gonna be in
all right. The building that UKC sets up for their office, where they call the casts out now and all, they have a big monitor on what we used to call a jumbotron up on the wall. There is the Kuhlman Center, Kuhlman, Kuhlman Center. It's the building where the kitchen used to be. They don't do a kitchen in there anymore. The club doesn't do the kitchen anymore. They have food booths outside and all. But anyway, right there, and that's where UKC headquarters is. So we're set up. Last year, if you were facing UKC headquarters, we were first booth on the right. So I imagine that's where I'll be this year. And I'll have the Gone to the Dogs graphics and stuff there too. But I hope people will come by. Last year, it was a lot of fun. I did, I think, 11 or 12 short interviews, 20 minutes or less, and aired those in 2 podcasts, and they were real popular. And I look forward to doing some more of that. And, so I invite people to come out, and stop by and see us. And we'll shoot the bull and put a Gone to the Dog sticker on your truck. And we'll just have a big time, and you can buy my lunch and
go get those. What are they? The chicken tenderloin sandwiches that they hammer out. They're like as big as a dinner plate.
Oh yeah, that was one of the greatest casualties of progress at Autumn Oaks was those pork chop sandwiches. Are no more.
Really?
That kitchen is
those
not
were good
there.
too.
Weren't they good? Yeah. But the ice cream trailer's still there.
and pie at O'Charlie's, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna miss that one. I'll miss
well,
Big
you
Mark.
just got to get a kitchen pass from Danny. And get out there, next year. But no, you got to bring her too. She needs to see that, and I fully expect that you guys are going to do so well with Full Cry this year that you're going to have a booth out there next year.
We plan
that's
on it.
That's my prayer and my desire for you guys.
Well, we went kind of makeshift on this one, but Ben Sheets was going to be there. So since we're sponsoring him, we're going to do a booth with Ben, and he's going to have some of his other sponsors coming in. So we'll have some representation there, but yeah, I think next year Danny's going to she's going to make the trip. I'm sure I'll make it with her.
Well, people will love meeting her, including me, which I haven't met her face to face yet. So
I know she's
I'm really
waiting.
looking forward to that. You bet.
She was a Steve Fielder junkie before I was. She knew you because she was so involved in AKC and UKC before. No. She's like, "Do you know who he is?" Before I knew you were Steve. I said, no, and she just rattles it off. And I said, well, someday you'll get to go meet him. We need to go fishing.
We got to meet for sure. Yeah, nothing much here but an old worn-out coon hunter, but I sure do enjoy meeting folks.
Well, I got her convinced for a White River Pass one of these years here coming up.
Oh, yeah. Well, you just need to come and go with us.
That's what I'm thinking.
You and Nubbin already. He's the senior member of our crew now, so
put in a good word for me.
If you got his blessing, you're good to go.
Well, you're work on it over there at Oaks, and we'll see what happens.
You just consider it done.
All right, bud. Well, I hope you have a great time, Steve. I encourage all of our listeners, if you're in driving distance and it's feasible, it is a good time. I guarantee you're going to meet somebody that was worth the trip and see something we're seeing. So I appreciate you coming on, Steve.
Yeah, I will jump in there real quick. One of my greatest joys is to see first-timers come to Autumn Oaks. My buddy Keston Jesse, young hunter from Virginia over there, he went for his first time last year. Oh
Yeah.
man, it was like a kid at Christmas. Billy Dwyer, who's a frequent Facebook
Oh, yeah.
poster and all from down Louisiana, he's making his first trip this year. So I'm really, really
It's a
looking
pilgrimage
forward
now.
to see what he thinks about it. So
No, that's great.
yeah.
Well, hopefully
been
next year we'll be there.
Well, Jason, thanks for having me on. I love DU Hunting Supply, of course. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing with Gone to the Dogs, and I appreciate that so much. And it's always good talking to you, bud.
Yeah, it was good to catch up. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you have a safe trip. You give my best to Ella, and we'll talk soon, Steve.
The same to Danny. We'll do that, brother. Bye now.